Key Stage 1 and welcome back to day 3 of your writing lessons for this week. So today's lesson is lesson 3 in our sequence of learning, and your learning objective for today is to orally rehearse and recite a poem. So you're going to be practicing reading our poem The Seaside that we've been looking at, and you'll also be remembering it so that you can perform it at the end. If you have a look at your success criteria here, you should be able to remember most of a poem. It says I can also use actions to recite a poem, and I can even vary my tone of voice for effect. So I think all of you will be able to do this because it's a short poem, and we've done poems before and you were absolutely fantastic at remembering them. Most of you will be able to use the actions to go along with it to help you remember the poem and to make an effective performance. Finally, this part of our success criteria, I can even vary my tone of voice for effect. I know that if you've been working with Miss Sharman or myself, we worked a lot on this when we did our Mexico adverts, and you were really, really good at it. So thinking about how you can change your tone of voice to make it interesting for the audience or whoever is listening to your poetry performance. First of all, just like every other writing lesson that you've done so far, we're going to start off by doing some retrieval practice. There is another quiz for you to do, Quick Fire 5, and this one is Key Stage 1 Poetry, and you can find that through the website underneath today's lesson or pop in the address in your browser. There are 5 questions. Good luck. On your screen, I have got the poem that we have been learning this week. I wonder if you remember what the title or name of our poem is. That's right, it is The Seaside. Instead of me reading you the poem today, I'd like you to read it to your grown-up. If your grown-up isn't there at the moment, you could read it to yourself. I'd like you to read it at least twice, if not more. We're going to be reading the poem, and then I'd like you to cover up the poem and see how much you can remember. I think you'll be able to remember a lot of it because you were fantastic in your poetry performances. So get reading and then cover up the poem and try and see how much you remember. That brings us to our first activity for today. As you can see, I've got the poem that we've been learning here, The Seaside, and I have got a video here of some actions that I have tried with the poem. So I've put some actions together to match the poem. Now you are more than welcome to copy the actions that I do to help you remember and learn the poem ready for your performance at the end of the lesson, or you can watch the actions that I do, and if you think you can come up with some better ones, then you can put those to the poem instead, so you can replace my actions with your own ones. So I'm going to play the video, so it's just an example of the actions you could use.
I can see the sea, I cried. I hope it doesn't rain. Shoes off, bare feet, sand between my toes. My family hired deck chairs. We set them up in rows. I'm hungry now, I lick my lips. I wonder what's for lunch. Sand in the fish and chips. Crunch, crunch, crunch.
Okay, so now you've seen my example of the actions that you could use for the poem. I would like you to practice reading the poem either with the actions that I came up with or your own actions. You can do this by yourself or you can do it with the help of an adult that is with you. And I'd like you to do this until you know it off by heart. Now that you know the poem really well and you've got some fantastic actions to go with it, that brings us to activity 2 for today's lesson. As you can see, we've got our poem again, and your task is to perform your poem to a grown-up or anyone in your household using the actions that you have been practicing. Now, I really want you to think about your tone of voice for this. So you need to make sure that you are making it interesting for your audience. That might be one adult, might be your brother, your sister, whoever you live with. So you are performing your poem. Good luck. Well done on your poetry performances. Once you have finished, that brings us to our plenary. For our plenary, today I would like you to complete a self-assessment. So that means that you're just going to think about your performance that you have just done, so your poetry performance. After you have performed your poem, I'd like you to come up with 2 things you think you did well and 1 thing that you think you could improve for next time. So you can either discuss this with your grown-up, or you can just write down your ideas straight away on this sheet here that is on the website for you. So you write 1 thing you did well here, the 2nd thing you did well here, and then something that I'd like you to think you could improve upon for next time. Alternatively, you could discuss with your adult first and then write it down on the sheet. So for example, 1 thing you think you might have done well was using some really fantastic actions. The 2nd thing you think you might have done really well might have been remembering all of the poem. And perhaps 1 thing you could have improved upon could be to vary your tone of voice next time. Those are just some examples of what you could put. Finally, we come on to today's reflection. So our learning objective for today was to orally rehearse and recite a poem. So get your finger ready in the air to tick or dot whether you think you achieved these success criteria. So the first one was, I can remember most of a poem. So if you think you can remember most of The Seaside poem, give yourself a big tick. If you're not sure, give yourself a dot. The second one, I can also use actions to recite a poem. So if you successfully used your own actions to remember and retell the poem, give yourself a tick. If not, then a dot. And finally, it said, I can even vary my tone of voice for effect. If you could do that, give yourself a tick. If not, give yourself a dot. Well done for working so hard yet again, and I look forward to tomorrow's lesson with you.